things were very rare to get, like oranges. Butter, you stand in line for 2 blocks long to get a quarter of a pound of butter. All these things. Well, there was such gratitude from this girl being healed that each week there was loaves of fresh bread and pound of butter and oranges and all kinds of stuff dropped off at our house. Well, you know, sometimes a little bit of cash doesn't hurt, but when you can have a little bit of food go along with it, isn't too bad. Yes?
Do you feel that the ointment, if you didn't have the fresh leaves, would have worked equally as well in particular cases?
Yes, if the ointment is made properly, it will work, as we have proven it in many, many cases. Let me show you a case right now. And this case is, instead of working on the effect, go to the cause. Now I'll use this on plantain again. I was called into Alpine, Utah on a house call because a man had lockjaw. And if you've ever run into lockjaw, you know you've got something that's serious here. The man was lying out on a couch as I walked into the house. Sure, I'm an eye diagnostician. I read the iris of the eye. But as I looked into his eyes, there's only one thing I saw, and that was pleading, begging for help. With lockjaw, he couldn't talk. He couldn't move his mouth. But I could see those eyes begging. Man in his upper 70s. And out of my bag, I opened my bag and I took out a bottle of tincture lobelia. And as he laid there, I just put 3 or 4 drops of tincture lobelia on his lips. And within seconds, he opened his mouth and said, "Doc, what'd you do?" I said, "I released your lockjaw. Now tell me what happened, what caused it." Well, he was up in the years and he'd never learned to read or write. And so he said, I couldn't tell the people who were here or the doctor what was wrong. And I tried to point out, but they couldn't get it through their heads. He said, "I stepped on a rusty nail." Well, I pulled off his shoe and he had a puffed up foot. Infection. Well, I reached down in my bag to get my bottle of ointment, and I'd used it all up. Well, here I went on out into the yard, and thank goodness there was some in the lawn there, and I dug up the plantain and made up a poultice and showed the family how to use it. And put it on, and I said, "Now keep it right on here till it draws all the poison out. When the red streak is gone and the lump from his thigh is gone and the swelling is down, and it's all right." Now here was the principle. Number one, I did what I was called in to do, took care of the lockjaw. Now I had to take the lockjaw and said, "It's all done. You're all okay. Everything's all right." Hours would have passed, and I got another call. "Get back here quick, you got the lockjaw again." Was it 3 times? That'll do the job. He's dead. Now, if I'd have gone back and worked on the effect another time or 2, he'd have not made the grade. But I didn't. I went to the cause, and the cause is the key to the whole thing. Where did the lockjaw start in the first place? Where does the trouble start? Don't just work on the effect. Go to the cause. And if I can keep plugging this in continually until it becomes irritating to you, so that you stand up in the middle of the bed and say, "What's the cause?" in the middle of the night, I know we've won.
I just wanted to relate a case we had with plantain.
Okay.
Kara had these little sandals that she just loved. We just got them for her, and she wouldn't stop wearing them, and they hurt, but she loved them, and so she wore them and made a little cut between her toes, a little blister, and it got infected, and she got red streaks running up her leg. And we just went over to the neighbor's house and asked them if we could dig some of their weeds. They were crazy. Sure, dig them all. And we took a couple of plantain leaves and stuck them between our toes. through that. Those red streaks right out. Very nice. Really quick, too.
I'm glad to hear that.
Doctor, what do you mean by bruising the leaves here? I mean,
Well, now, there are many ways to bruise leaves. The one way is to take your plantain and run it through a meat grinder. Or you can take a hammer and bruise them. Or, as we are working in an emergency, we put them in our hands and bruise them this way and chop them up. But what we're doing is breaking up the leaf so that we've got the raw chlorophyll substance to get into the wounded area, where it doesn't do it quite as fast unless it's when it isn't bruised. Bruising is just an aid.
I'd like to relate a story with plantain too.
Good. Make it loud enough so they can hear it at the back too.
Okay, a while back, there was a little girl who was bitten by a dog. Her mother was frantic, and she came running into the building where everybody was, and she said her daughter had been bitten by a dog. And she was barefooted, she was running around, it was winter, and obviously something was very seriously wrong. And I had bought Dr. Christopher's tapes, and I listened to the tapes, and I remembered about a lot of things that were on there, and the plantain and so forth was one thing that he drummed into my head from the tapes. And I got into a habit of carrying a few little things around with me in my car. And it just so happened I had my little bag there. And I asked where this girl lived, and it was just right down the street. So I went out to my car, got my little bag, and went in. And I looked at the scene there, and it was really a sad scene. The girl she was about 12 years old. She was sitting on the couch with her foot up on the coffee table. She was shaking like this, and she was sweating. And I looked behind her leg, and they had a bulldog. Her mother had bought a full-grown bulldog, and she had 7 kids in the house. And the dog turned on the girl, and then the dog ran away. So they didn't know what the situation was. I looked behind the leg, and the dog had literally torn her leg completely out. I mean, it was like, there were pieces of flesh, there were punctures. The flesh came out of her leg about a ½ inch in each puncture. It was behind the knee, it was all the way down the leg, behind the ankle. I didn't really know what to do. I said, this is serious. I said, my goodness, I hope this little bag has my stuff in it. And I remembered the plantain. So the first thing I went down and grabbed was the plantain, and I just rubbed it all in the, I can't say in because the thing was like big lumps coming all out of her leg. I just rubbed it all everywhere. The next thing I thought of was some garlic oil. I had some oil of garlic in there. I took that and rubbed that all over the place. And the next thing I thought of was some lobelia. I just took some lobelia, told her to open her mouth. But she was shaking, you know. I told her to open her mouth and just squirted some in her mouth. And they had called the paramedics, and nobody came. The paramedics were waiting for the paramedics. And everybody's walking around the house scared and frantic, and the girl's sitting there shaking. Finally, the paramedics arrived. Finally, it must have been about 25 minutes before the paramedics got there, and this girl's leg was torn up. And it dawned on me, they're going to ask what happened here. I said, oh my goodness. So I said, okay, they're going to ask what happened here. I said, if they ask what happened, just tell them that I put some garlic on there, because it was obvious garlic was on there.
You can smell that.
Because if I told them what else was on there, they wouldn't know what it was anyway. So they came in, and they opened up their bags, and they looked at the leg and everything. They took it and examined it, and they obviously smelled the garlic on there. And I volunteered and said, oh yeah, I put some garlic oil on here while you were on your way. The guy was looking at the leg, he said, oh, you shouldn't have done that. I said, right. So he wrapped her up, and they took her off to the hospital. The next day, her mother came, and she thanked me for doing what I did. She said that the doctor asked who did the first aid on this leg. And she mentioned that a friend of hers had done the first aid on the leg. And he said, it's a very serious wound here. I don't know exactly what all he did here, But tell that guy he's got a cool head on his shoulders, and if he hadn't done whatever he did, this leg would have been infected before she even got to the hospital.
Good. Well, there it is. You know something? There's a thank you right there. And you know, you'll never forget that thank you. And you'll all have your chance. Every one of you. Just like he had. The door is always ready to be open for you. I think it's wonderful.
She healed up, the leg healed up.
It would heal if you got the infection out.
I used the ointment.
You use the plantain ointment.
And the
No,
garlic
I bought it.
is the garlic good for any sore then, so it doesn't get infected?
Well, garlic, we'll go into that more, but it does kill infection. Garlic is one of the greats. Yes.
I have one that is similar to that. There's an old fellow that came across the street, and he'd been bitten by a bee, stung by a bee, and his eye was all swollen shut. I told his mother, I said, why don't you put some plantain on that? She said, put some plantain. So I went over to my place, we have all kinds of it, so I got it, mashed it up with my fingers, put it on there, and within a half hour, the eye opened up. She said, well, that wasn't the kid that was bothering me. So this little guy here, we're going to have an operation on. So you have a tube put in his ear. I said, you don't want to do that. She said, well, what do we do? So I said, put some garlic oil, some lobelia in there, and give him a lot of vitamin C. She said, we don't have that. So I got that. This is on Monday night. And Tuesday afternoon, she called me. She really thanked me. She said, we don't have to take the boy to the hospital. He's stopped crying. Everything's fine.
All right. You took a gamble. Now, that's a brave man that'll do that, I promise you. Because you haven't been through some of the things that I have. I'll still do the same thing, but...
They knew her just a little bit.
Well, that helped.
So they knew what the figure was. They knew how to start it for them. When I suggested it, they said, hey, that's great, let's do it.
All right. You know, the door is wide open, and we're not actually living until we get a few thank yous.
Is lobelia, is that B&B tincture that you have?
Well, lobelia is in B&B tincture, but we have a tincture of lobelia.
You can put that directly in your ear?
Directly. We'll talk more about lobelia later on. Sometimes I wish the meetings were a few more days long because it'd give us a little more time to talk, and I like to yak, you know. It's just part of me.
Plantain ointment is on the market. Does that have olive oil instead of the lard? It's listed on the bottle. Is that...
I imagine it does. The olive oil will do the same thing in most cases.
I mean, you want a pound of lard. How much in terms of olive oil?
It'd be the same. A pound of olive oil, but you'll have to put the solidifier in it, which would be the beeswaxer.
Probably take more, perhaps, than
No,
lard, or
about the same. Let me tell you why lard. Now, some of you may be Jewish. Some of you may not like the idea of using lard at all. But here is the reason. A pig is standing in the yard at where they always are, at the trough, and working it over, and a bee hits it. I mean a snake, and sink the fangs in. Well, these cases have happened so many times, they sink the fangs in and they can't get the fangs out. So it's drained all the poison into the pig. And the snake hangs on there until another pig eats it off. Yes, this is a fact. But the poison is in the pig. Now, that pig ignores it, just like a fly had hit it, instead of a poisonous snake. And the reason is that lard that the snake sunk its fangs into absorbed the poison and hung on to it. And it would not allow it to go on into the body of the pig. So when we use lard in an ointment, it does two things. Number one, it will pull poisons out, and in exchange, put the herbal ingredients in. And it's a two-way street. Now, many of your oils, muttons will not do the same. A number of the things will not do the same. Anhydrous lanolin will not do the same. So this is precious this way, and that's why we use the common lard. May I say why we use dried leaves? Now, we're talking about plantain. Why we use dried instead of the fresh. Now, you can use the fresh and you make up the ointment and it'll do a wonderful job. But using the fresh ointment, or using the fresh leaf, it has moisture in it. And the moisture and the ointment itself don't mix too well. And it's going to come to the surface and mildew. And your ointment is going to have a scum on it, which is rather annoying. With a dry herb, it will never do this. And this is why we do use the dry herb instead.